I'm here in the middle of the spectacular Nephin mountain range in County Mayo. Now, without doubt, it is one of the most beautiful places in the country, but it's also one of the most difficult places to farm. And under planned new EU environmental regulations, it's going to get even more difficult. Local farmers say they've had enough. Frank McManaman can trace his family roots here back to 1770, when his forefathers paid £32 for a lease on some commonage. Since that time, his family has had shared grazing rights on these hills. Frank currently has 400 Mayo black-faced ewes roaming across nearly 3,000 acres.
A commonage is where a group of farmers would own a share in the area of land. The commonage isn't wired.
So your animals aren't fenced in?
There's no set boundary. Not fenced in. Not fenced in, correct. Yeah.
Okay. And how big an area is your commonage?
One of the commonages that I'm involved in, I have a share of 400 acres. There's 7 of us in it, so that's, was it 2,800 acres thereabouts, so it's a huge area.
What's it like to farm such a huge area? Can it get chaotic?
No, because we're born and reared in this environment, and this is what we do. I know my sheep, I know my neighbour's sheep, my neighbour would know my sheep, as he would know his own.
As well as providing an income to farmers like Frank, these mountains are unique habitats of enormous environmental importance. Legislation at both European and national level govern how and when these areas can be grazed.
We were involved in a destocking scheme. It started in '98. There was 30% destocked of us.
So you had to cut your numbers?
We had to cut our numbers
Why?
by 30%. Because they felt that some of the commonages were overgrazed. Then about 8 years ago, they brought in a scheme where we had to destock the sheep for 5 months of the year. Our numbers were cut dramatically. The mountains became overgrown in some places, and that created a problem in itself because the sheep wouldn't go onto that area and graze it. And the numbers of sheep weren't there to push them onto those areas.
To illustrate the problem of undergrazing, Frank brought me up the mountain with fellow commonage farmer Thomas Mulcrone. Frank, will sheep graze this?
Not this.
Why?
No. They won't eat that grass. That grass is dead. That's old, we call it scutch grass. Poverty grass, in other words, poverty grass. They won't eat that. They'll eat that when it's 2 or 3 inches high. But that's all.
Under the new European Agri-Environmental Scheme GLAS, the Department of Agriculture here is pushing for a collective management agreement between all the farmers involved in a commonage.
Before this, under previous schemes, you might have 20 shareholders on the hill, and each of them would have their own plan that they'd have to put forward, and each of those people would implement that plan their own way, with their own particular priorities, their own objectives, over their own particular timescale. Now we want a single plan drawn up for the commonage by a single qualified agricultural advisor appointed by the farmers themselves. Rather than us laying down the rules from on high on this, we actually want to push this back down to the farmers themselves, the people who farm that land, to design their own plan, not one that we have given them.
But hill farmers across the country argue that this collective management approach is an option, not a requirement under the EU scheme. They further contend that achieving agreement amongst such large groups of farmers would be next to impossible, particularly as many may not even live locally.
Collective agreement means that if one farmer doesn't abide by the rules, every shareholder in the commonage is penalised. We'll say that commonage down there now, one of the commonages I'm in, my neighbour that's in it is, he lives about 20 miles away from me. How can I be responsible for him? You know, it doesn't add up.
The farmers we've spoken to would say this is a very big ask. If you were asking for a group of possibly 20 individuals to come together and agree on a scheme, it's nigh on impossible at times.
First of all, it's a big ask. There's no question of that, right? This is a challenge, and we've spent some time over the last 18 months discussing this with people, discussing it with the hill farmers, discussing it with the representatives, discussing with the IFA. We've been on the road ourselves. We've met the hill farmers in 7 different locations around the country, which has been hugely informative, hugely helpful, and we believe we have a scheme in place that will work.
Frank's neighbour, Thomas Mulcrone, returned to sheep farming about 3 years ago. Prior to that, he had worked in construction, But when the downturn came, he decided to go back to what he loved doing most. Now, in light of widespread opposition to the GLAS scheme amongst hill farmers, he sees an uncertain future ahead. You're farming full-time?
Yes.
Are you a rarity around here?
Yeah, there's not much young lads at this, and there won't be at this because they can see no future in this.
Do you regret the decision? You're still a relatively new entrant to this.
No, I don't regret it, but I just don't see a future for the young farmer unless something has to change. Like, the department has to talk to these young farmers and see where we're going in the future, like, and put some right scheme in place, not a GLAS scheme, because I don't think it'll work.
How big a problem is just that you're operating in limbo at the moment, that you just don't know what the rules are going to be?
It's hard, like, you cannot plan, you cannot go and buy your lambs, you cannot for me to stock up, or you cannot know that you can sell your lambs or things for the young farmer unless something has to change. Like, the department has to talk to these young farmers and see where we're going in the future, like, and put some right scheme in place, not a GLAS scheme, because I don't think it'll work.
How big a problem is just that you're operating in limbo at the moment, that you just don't know what the rules are going to be?
It's hard, like, you cannot plan, you cannot go and buy your lambs, you cannot for me to stock up, or you cannot know that you can sell your lambs or things like that. You just don't know.
Another issue that these farmers have with the GLAS scheme is that it offers them substantially less in payments than previous schemes for their efforts in maintaining the landscape.
Brussels are looking to keep these areas in pristine condition. And as far as I can see, the department don't want to pay for this sort of a thing. Like, we are the custodians of the land. And like, the problem is that down the road in a couple of years' time, they're going to have to pay a huge amount of money to get people to come in again and look after these hills.
So you would see it that you're providing a service?
Yeah, we're keeping these hills maintained, so we are keeping them in good state. And I think people in Dublin in offices and in Brussels in offices doesn't realise the job we're doing, and never will. They have to come out and see how we're farming and get to know the way we farm, because hill farming is such a unique thing. Like,
we agree entirely with them on that particular point. We've made that very clear throughout the development of GLAS. And if what we've proposed over those years of minimum and maximum stocking densities is wrong, well, tell us that, submit that in your plan, make the case, and you'll find you're going to get a positive response.
Right now, many hill farmers across the country face an uncertain future, and unless some compromise is reached, this way of life could become a thing of the past.
Look, I'll stick it out, but I can't see my son. I just can't see him doing it. Now, he's interested in it and he has sheep of his own, but I can't see him doing it. I wouldn't want him to go through the hardship.
Next week on Ear to the Ground, dark days are over.